and we are hoping to catch up with them today. The usual numbers are available for you on 061 410 4107. That is our WhatsApp line. If you'd like to send through a WhatsApp voice note, you're more than welcome to do so. 086 000 2032. That's the number that you can call. By the way, the question for you is, do you care when you go to the hospital, whether you use private, whether you use public, whether you use your local clinic, whether you go to your doctor's rooms? Do you care whether the doctor and the nurse are fatigued, tired, they've seen 100 patients before you? Or do you just have an expectation for them to, conduct and see to you as though you are the first person they've seen that day, give you all the attention, all the energy, and make absolutely no human error while doing it? Let us know. 086 000 2032.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga. Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
We are in conversation now with Dr. Hlombe Makuluma, who's a clinical risk management specialist at Ethical. And we are talking about this. Patients are urged to discuss grievances with their doctors before reporting cases or taking legal action against them, as this has a negative impact on the healthcare practitioners' mental well-being, but I'm sure on a plethora of other things as well. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Hlombe. How are you?
Good afternoon, Bridget. Good, thank you. And good afternoon to your listeners.
I asked the question to our listeners, do they care? Do they care that Dr. Hlombe on that day, is overworked, understaffed, too many patients, his cat at home is, feeling a bit sick, his children were giving him grief in the morning, and now he has to come and give medical attention? What's your sense as a doctor? Are we empathetic to the experience of medical practitioners?
Just think about it. When you go to the hospital, maybe you've got a backache, you've got a chest pain, you've got headaches, you've got your own problems, really. I think most patients, when they come, they're thinking about themselves, understandably so.
Yeah.
So we can't fault patients when they come and they are sick. They think that we are superhuman beings, and therefore, no worry, the doctor is going to sort me out.
Absolutely. I said this to my producers and they looked at me like I was insensitive because they asked me that question. I was like, no, I don't care.
No, you don't.
No, I don't.
Yeah. And doctors understand that.
Yeah.
We go in there understanding that he is a sick person. I just need to put all my attention to this patient in front of me. Yes, there are many other things that are happening around us. But at that point, when you're seated across me, I'm focusing on doing the best I can.
Yeah. But with that said, though, to my intro and how it alludes, there's a growing concern that patients, patients are taking legal action, taking all kinds of remedial actions because they feel as though they're not getting the best out of doctors for whatever reason.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we should put the context properly here. We are saying patients should first talk to their healthcare practitioner before going outside, because the initial relationship has been between this doctor and this patient. When there is a problem, when you think there is a problem, please talk to your doctor first. I think what is problematic is, here am I treated this patient, I don't see this patient for the next year. The next thing, there are legal letters that are coming in and saying that I did something wrong. And I've never seen that patient. Probably the patient has gone somewhere. So what we're saying that if you have a problem, please come and talk to us. And the context behind that is, one, we don't have a lot of doctors in the country.
Yeah.
Two, the legal process itself, even if you report to our council, the HPCSA, it's a very long process and it can be costly. And therefore, in many cases, you find that the patient himself or herself or the family don't really get the answers they were looking for. It has been found that the reasons why they would take action, firstly, what happened to me? What happened to my family member? What happened to my whoever friend? And that explanation can only be brought back by the doctor who treated. or the institution where the treatment has gone. If you take it to the legal action, immediately you are less likely to find the answers you're looking for. So let's talk to our doctors first.
So with that in mind, talk to your doctors first before you institute any kind of legal action. And I mean, statistics that I read revealed that of the complaints brought against the healthcare professionals in South Africa, just 9% were referred by the Health Professionals Council to an inquiry before a profession conduct committee. Before we get to that statistic, does what you said about talk to your doctor first, does that also reflect perhaps a breakdown in this relationship between doctor and patient? Because at some point it used to be sacrosanct, yeah, right? Dr. Hlompe is my doctor. I trust him with everything. And so we can have this conversation. But clearly this is now telling me that there's a breakdown in this interaction.
I really think that the majority of people actually do come and talk to the doctors, right? So what we see, the problem that we find is that it becomes sensationalized to a point where now doctors, all of them, are just afraid of working, afraid of, imagine this. You are a surgeon and your hands are shaking because you do not know if I open this patient up or now that this patient is bleeding, the next question I'm thinking about, maybe there's criminalization that's coming my way. Therefore, it's an important aspect that, patients that actually talk to their doctors, they find better solutions, right, than patients that would go out to the media. These days, it's even worse. Social media, they would post all kinds of things. It's not the doctor that is affected only. It's the broader community of doctors. That is where the big problem is at. With a very low ratio of a doctor-patient, it becomes very difficult for a doctor who's practicing. Then they will say, maybe I should stop doing operations. Maybe I should stop, catching babies, as you would call it, in maternity. Maybe I should do something different. What does that mean? It means the society at large, has got one or two or three other doctors that are in short supply. That's a big problem that we're facing.
Let's hold it there for a second and go to a break. 086 000 2032 061 410 4107 if you'd like to send through a WhatsApp voice note. Do you care at all how your doctor is doing? Or it's just something that you don't care about. It may seem, inhumane of us, but a lot of us probably don't think about it. Let us know your thoughts.
Catch the Insider SA this Monday evening at 6 as pastry chef Sahil Sigabin bakes up a festival of Diwali treats.
And I hope you have a blessed one.
Rudy Page passes his rugby passions onto his family.
I'm beyond proud of my dad. My dad played for my country.
And Loyiso Gijana put his all into music.
That's what has communicated with people, is because I'm writing from my heart.
That's the Insider SA this Monday evening at 6. Repeat Saturday at 1 p.m. and Sunday morning at 9 on S3.
Open the Absa Cash Invest Tracker account and earn the best rates in the market. More than the top 10 money market funds' average returns. Enjoy unmatched advantages at an interest rate of 8.9% per annum. Plus, if you open your account today, you could win your share of 15 million rand in luxury travel experiences for two. Yes, you heard right. A trip for you and your partner. My bank does that. Open yours today in less than 5 minutes on the banking app at your nearest Absa branch or consult your private banker or call 0860 111 515. Absa is an authorized FSP and a registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
South Africa and Benin are both searching for tickets to the FIFA World Cup 2026. Bafana want to demonstrate their thirst and appetite for the global spectacle. But the Cheetahs are just as hungry for maximum points. Southern Africa versus West Africa. Catch the FIFA World Cup qualifier between South Africa and Benin on Saturday, 18 November at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Bridget Masinga SAFM.
It is the full circle with myself, Bridget Masinga. Andrew says, I think we should be considerate because, sorry, Andrew, your message just, because our nurses do work hard, but their attitudes are what now? Something about their attitudes. Okay, I don't know. It disappeared. I mean, we get those cases as well, Andrew. But yes, we should actually be a little bit considerate. 0.31 doctors per 1,000 patients. What does this mean in practicality, Dr. Hlompe? Because if we are to be considerate, then we also should be conscious of what these numbers mean. 0.31 doctors to every 1,000 patients. So on a rotation, that equates to a doctor on average seeing how many people at a public institution?
That's a very difficult question because the distribution is not very equal. So you may find that distribution is worse in the rural areas or in the outlying areas, and that distribution is different in an area like where we are today.
I see.
But in general, if you look at the 65 million people apparently that we have in the country, and you've got one Dr. Hlombe, that one Dr. Hlombe, break that Dr. Hlombe into three so that I can be able to see at least 1,000 patients. So myself as one, I have maybe 3,000 patients that I need to see. Right. So you can just imagine, the burden that is actually there. And when we talk about seeing a patient, we're not talking about a patient probably who's just there with a very simple thing. Some of these patients are very complex, have got very complex conditions that I would have to spend a lot of time. And not just time, but again, maybe a week or 2 or 3, depending on the condition. Right? So that ratio, it's really out. And now if we litigate, and we call it unfounded and ill-considered, we're not using those words willy-nilly. We are saying because medicine itself, when you work with the patient, you do your best for the patient, but there are inherent risks.
Absolutely.
There are inherent complications, even in the hands of your best doctor. Error may happen, or you may respond differently from one patient to another patient. Therefore, before you take action, let's come back and talk to the doctor.
And do you think perhaps we comprehend that as patients, the fact that when you're dealing with humans, yes, on the one hand, there could be human error and human judgment, but on the other hand, there's also shifting variables that a doctor has to now respond to and interpret. And as you said, it's different between Bridget and Sbongile and.
I think we as doctors, we are well aware. We normally say patients don't read books. Right. That is one. 2, we also say that I might have a relationship in terms of a doctor-patient relationship with Bridget. But Bridget has got a partner, has got a father, has got a mother, has got a brother, has got other people who would say to you, maybe you need to take this doctor on. And yourself as the patient who has had this complication, you might be thinking, oh no, man, let me talk to the doctor. But then, because of the pressures, you may have to go and take action. Because remember, that's your support structure. Right. So we're always aware that some of the matters that get brought on, they're not only coming from the patient. Using platforms like these, the message should go all out there to say, let's talk to the doctor first.
I'm just looking at the time and we have to go into a headline news and wrap it up. But I do want to ask you before we bring my next guest, perhaps you respond to me on the other side of this because, these unfounded cases of litigation are having adverse effects on doctors. And I know specifically, OBGYNs, for instance, there are lesser and lesser doctors specializing in that particular field, because of the risk associated with it and the malpractice lawsuits. And we don't think about that. And as you said, we need people to catch babies. And when there are no people to catch babies, we're going to be in a problem. But we'll come back and Dr. Hlompe will give us his closing remarks on that. For now, Ann Musa standing by with the headline news.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Bridget. In the headlines, and investigative report that the Gauteng Education Department released reveals educators from the Ketlekile Primary School in Thokoza east of Johannesburg flouted protocol. This relates to an altercation between two learners that ultimately led to the death of one of the learners at the school. Lobby group AfriForum says out of the samples tested from treatment works this year, only 19% meet the minimum standards. It has just released its annual Blue and Green Drop report. The findings mean an alarming 81% of cases of the water that's dumped into rivers has not been adequately treated. And the former British Prime Minister David Cameron has held talks with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Cameron says he wants Ukraine to be his first destination in his new role as Foreign Secretary. I'll have details on these and other stories at 2.
You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
It is the full circle as we wrap up our conversation with Dr. Hlompe Makuluma, who is a clinical risk management specialist at Ethical. As we went into a break, I brought up OBGYNs because, I've seen interviews, I've seen this particular grouping of specialists are in danger when it comes to what we are talking about today. And lesser and lesser medical students are specializing in this field because of these risk factors associated with being an OBGYN.
I think you've answered the question by asking who's going to deliver our babies. And the matter there is birth by itself. There's so many different variables that a doctor has no control over. So if something goes wrong there, it's less likely that it is a doctor, or unless it can be proven. And therefore, we are saying, please, let us just communicate better with our doctors. Let us understand the complexity of medicine. And when we have a chance, and any time like today, being the National Doctors' Day, thank our doctors. I was saying earlier, we had COVID in 2020. And doctors were heroes. Let's keep that spirit, because there are everyday heroes that are working in areas where they don't appear on TV, they don't appear on social media. But believe you me now, just across the road, the hospital that is just there, there's a lot of lives that are being saved there. Let's thank our doctors. Let's be grateful to our doctors. If we have platforms to talk about doctors, let's really send a positive message out there. Thank you to our doctors.
Absolutely. And just as we finish, because my next guest is here, that hanging over the head also of this, right? Because Dr. Hlompe gets into a situation and it hangs over you.
Yes.
Like emotionally and otherwise.
Yes, because the litigation process takes a long time and it's costly, and it affects the doctor internally, mentally. It affects the patient internally, mentally. We should not really run away from that fact. But we could have better ways of solving this. And also not to criminalize doctors. Don't take criminal action, because every day doctor goes out to save a life, not to do harm.
Yeah. We'll leave it on that thought for this afternoon with Dr. Hlompe Makuluma, who is a clinical risk management specialist at Ethical. Just to keep in the back of your mind that only 9% of the complaints brought against healthcare professionals in South Africa were actually referred to some kind of professional conduct committee. 9%. Think about that next time you have a grievance with your doctor. Let's take a quick break and welcome in our next guest.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation.
Every person, no matter who you are, what music you're inclined to listen to, and what you do with your weekends, you need a weekend playlist. It's that musical mix of music that accompanies the lazy weekends, whether catching up with friends and family or just taking some time to reflect. Tune in to The Soundtrack of Your Life with me, Ernest Pillay, Saturdays and Sundays, 1 to 4 on SAFM.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
We are now shifting gears a little bit and moving on to the lighter side of life. Miss Universe, the pageant, is set to air on S3 this coming Sunday. And of course, you know that Bridget Masinga was named Miss Universe South Africa for 2023. And she's off representing us. It's going to be a star-studded night. And we've got the head of Platforms Video Entertainment, David Makubanye, joining me. How are you doing?
I'm okay, thanks, Bridget. How are you?
I'm always fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, you should be more excited. So much going on the platforms these days.
Oh, no, we're very excited. Of course, we had Miss South Africa.
Yes, that did really well.
It did very well for us. So now, as a follow-on, we now have Miss Universe.
Yeah. You know what I love about this, David? I grew up watching these pageants on SABC, and it's a beautiful thing to have them back on SABC.
That's it. And that's one of the things that we're really proud of.
Yeah.
When we got Miss South Africa back, and not only Miss South Africa, we obviously Miss World, SA as well, that broadcast at the end of October on S3 as well.
Yeah.
Now it's Miss Universe. Just, as you know, as a public broadcaster, we are free to air. It's always great that we can make all this great international high-quality content available to any South African.
Absolutely. So this should be an interesting Sunday, and hopefully it's a big weekend all around. I mean, there's going back to back Summer's Miss Universe.
Yes. Yes. It's a big weekend. As you know, on that very Sunday, we should have the final.
Yes.
Today, the cricket is playing. Hopefully, we actually win and we end up in the finals. That'll be great. It's also on S3.
Lovely.
We've got the Summer Awards on SABC 1. So now I'm talking about all the other platforms.
But, we all one big family.
Yes, and then we've got, obviously, I'm here today to talk about Miss Universe.
Yeah.
And we've got Bridget Masinga representing us, flying that flag. That's going to happen. It's happening on S3, but it's live. Because of the time difference, it's going to go out at 3 a.m. in the morning. But we know a lot of people are going to be sleeping.
I'll be asleep.
So we're going to then repeat it at 8 o'clock in the evening.
Lovely.
So on the same channel, we'll also put it on SABC Plus.
Okay.
So it'll also be available on SABC Plus for those people who would be sleeping and they'll wake up to the X feeds telling them about who has won and so on. But it's always good to actually experience it live.
Absolutely.
And yeah.
And a lot of people don't appreciate sort of the pull that pageants have. I mean, it's a whole global movement. The pull that pageants have for television production and for television viewership.
No, definitely. I mean, you remember that how big it was when Zozibini won, and how international. Remember that all of the countries around the world are rooting for their own representative. So at any given time, everyone is wanting to see that, their candidate or their person is going to win, right? So it is quite big. It's as big as that. But I think the important thing is what it does as well in terms of where we are with representation of women, what it does for advocacy work. I mean, you would know, I know very well that it's also your background.
Yes.
In terms of what it is that it does for anyone who wants to do social anthropology.
Yeah.
And assist communities. And from an African and South African perspective, also what it does in terms of a young girl who's in a rural area, in terms of inspiration, aspiration, and wanting a platform to achieve whatever they want to achieve in life.
Absolutely.
So definitely it's big, but in terms of alignment to us as a public broadcaster, I think it's also good in terms of building self-esteem, also putting on the spotlight not only world issues, but also, human rights issues. And when you watch the pageant, it's not just about watching beautiful people.
Yeah.
It's people who are highly educated, and they deal with serious issues that affect us. There are wars that are happening around us. There's issues of global warming, climate change. And in most cases, when you watch the pageants, these are the issues that we discuss. Poverty around the world, global millennium goals that we have here in Africa that need to be dealt with. And it's almost like having these sort of platforms and champions that can lead these discussions.
You see, and he's that gender, and he's saying this. So I hope from this day forward, anytime we talk to the missus, you remember that this gender was in studio, and this is what he said. But as we wrap it up, so Brioni, we're obviously all following her on social media, and she is our Miss Universe South Africa, out there flying the flag high. And we can still rally behind her before the live show on Sunday, from what I understand, yeah?
Yes, so on the website for the pageantry, you should be able to go on. I'm not certain. We just need to check. It should be closing very soon.
Okay.
But for her to get into the next
the semi-finals,
it's very important that we get on. And as South Africans, we actually vote for her. So it is important that we rally and support her. The same way we supported the rugby, the same way we are now supporting the Proteas.
Timber and the boys, yeah.
Yes, so we need to be behind her, and she must feel that the entire country is behind her as well.
Absolutely. Hope you don't become a stranger. That was head of Platforms Video Entertainment, David Makubanye, joining me. Sunday, we have a date at 3 a.m. if you can set your alarm and wake up. Otherwise, I think David is okay to take us at 8 p.m. Sunday evening as well. We can gather in the socials as well and share all of our opinions and thoughts on that one. Let's take a quick break as we get into stages, pages, screens, and more. Pula, the musical being staged at the South African State Theatre.
SFM invites you to our inaugural public lecture, delivered by the former Chief Justice, Mogoeng Mogoeng.
I reflected on the lives of these men and said, Steve Biko could have been a medical doctor. Aubrey Mokwape, they could have been medical doctors, but for the sake of me and many others, they chose a path of justice. What challenges me all the time is there are multitudes out there who are unemployed, who are uneducated, people who from time to time go to bed without food. This is an opportunity to use this privilege, to use this position for the advancement of the cause of justice, because there is so much more that still needs to be done out there.
The lecture will take place on the 29th of November 2023 at the SABC M1 Studios in Johannesburg. Secure your seat by emailing us at info@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversation. You are listening to The Full Circle.
It's a Thursday afternoon, and it seems as though we're cooking with gas on this little runaway train of ours that happens between 1 and 3 o'clock every single weekday afternoon. Right now, it's time for us to get into stages, pages, screens, and more.
Stages, pages, screens, and more on The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga.
So the South African State Theatre is set to be abuzz with excitement. Pula is the highly anticipated musical, and it's making its grand mark at the State Theatre for 4 days only, from the 30th of November until the 3rd of December. Just in time, Andrew Litsokula, to welcome in the festive season. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. You are directing this incredible production, I'm sure. Right now, you are running like a chicken with no head with only 2 weeks to go.
Yeah. I'm the one directing the show, and it's really hectic at the moment.
I can only imagine. Let's talk about Pula. I know that it's set in Botswana, but does it tell a story original to the Botswana, or does it straddle Botswana, South Africa, and maybe some other region?
Yeah, the story basically it's the story of Pula basically it's originally based in the Botswana culture and region basically in terms of the setup of the story and all that, the set and everything. So it's based in Botswana set, and we're using dance and music to express the show.
Is it an original play, or is it maybe borrowed from an old Botswana folk tale?
No, it's an original play, and obviously we have some of the tales there and there as part of the script. But the production is the original play that I created and directed and put into stage. Yeah.
I see. Now, in terms of the themes, let's talk a bit about that, because from what I understand, it's a dance musical, right?
Yeah, it's a dance musical.
And in terms of some of the themes that are explored?
So
in terms of some of the themes that are explored within the play?
Okay. Basically, the production, it's rooted into the Botswana culture in terms of music and dance. And it's basically most of the dance in the production it's Tswana dance. And remember that we have different styles of Tswana dance in Botswana, not just normal other dances that people they know, especially in our neighboring countries, which is South Africa and all. So we have a vast dances that we are going to explore with the dance, and then obviously is covering issues of rain in Botswana. Remember that we are a semi-desert country, and we receive rain not all the time. There's a certain time when we have rain in Botswana, and when we receive rain, it means a lot to Botswana, especially a kid or a grandmother or a mother. It's time for them to go to. We have what you call masimo, where our plowing fields and all that, where we plow and we prepare. We plow to have harvest for another season. So that's basically it's an original story of Botswana who depends on agriculture, who depends on plowing every year, and so basically probably sustaining that family through that.
I see.
So it's a story about Botswana culture.
I see. Now let's talk a little bit about some of the traditional music that is featuring in Pula, the musical. You said some of it is, traditional folk music. Some of it is original music. I'm very interested in the traditional folk music of Botswana.
Yeah. Some of it, not really most of it. Some of it is traditional folk music, and it's folk music that has been created before, and it's just there, and it can be used by the community and all that, which every Botswana connects with and all that. And obviously, there's other traditional music, Tswana music that we create for the show, and then again there's. Obviously, the musical, we started exploring other things whereby we put in now the contemporary feel of music and all that. And with that, again, we have people who are working with us, the likes of Simpiwe Skakane, who we met and we work with. He's from South Africa, Soweto. So, and we're trying to create contemporary music for the show and all that, that we're going to tell the story of Pula about.
Just a reminder again, Andrew, the show is only running for the 4 days and 4 days only at the State Theatre.
Yeah. The show is running for 4 days at the State Theatre from the 30th to the 3rd of 30th of November to the 3rd of December. And the show starts at 8 p.m. Every day in the evening and 3 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday.
Lovely stuff. That was Andrew Litsokula, who is the director of Pula, the musical. Thank you for the time this afternoon. You can catch Pula, the musical, making its grand mark at the South African Grand Ole Girl, the Stay Theatre, for 4 days only from the 3rd of November until from the 30th of November until the 3rd of December. Some evening shows as well as some matinee shows there, especially during the weekend if you want to take the little ones. That was Stages, Pages, Screens and more this afternoon. By the way, today is International Day for Tolerance, and every day on November the 16th, the International Day for Tolerance generates awareness of the dangers of intolerance. And since the day was brought to inception, it's been the UN's goal to strengthen tolerance by fostering mutual understanding amongst cultures and people. And you can always use the hashtag to connect with the global community today, hashtag International Day for Tolerance. And I think now more than ever, with everything that is going on in the world and everything that is polarizing humanity and pulling at us in different corners, now more than ever, we need to lead from a place of tolerance and lead from a place of empathy with each other. I don't know, perhaps it's just, wishful thinking, but I think more than anything, we need to just remember that part of ourselves. We may not agree on everything, and the likelihood is we're not going to agree on everything all the time. But at the very least, we should agree to do that within the context of empathy and understanding and tolerance for each other's views. I don't know. Do you agree? Don't you agree? You think I'm talking hogwash? You can always share with us on 061 410 4107. That's 061 410 4107. That is our WhatsApp line if you want to share your perspective. What do you think? International Day of Tolerance or anything else that is on the table this afternoon. You can always still double back on our earlier conversation with Dr. Hlombe and let us know, your experiences perhaps with medical professionals in South Africa. Are you satisfied? Are you tolerant and understanding of the pressures that they have to go through every single day and the strain that their career really just places on them? And so perhaps when you encounter them from a place of tolerance and understanding, unlike the rest of us who might be a little bit impatient. You're more than welcome to express yourself on 061 410 4107. That is our WhatsApp line. Alternatively, you can always find us on X. We are there as well at Bridget Masinga.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 106.1 FM in Durban North. SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
Friends, and welcome to Nali Bali. When listening to the stories on the radio, allow your imagination to form pictures in your mind. This skill will help you picture and understand stories that were delivered to you on the radio every Thursday and Friday on SAFM. Sit tight and enjoy today's story called The Magic Vacuum, written by Hamilton Wende. But before we listen to today's story, let's all get up and dance. It all began on the day Mom bought a new vacuum cleaner. The vacuum cleaner could be operated from an app that could be downloaded on a phone. Jack thought that was great. He quickly called his best friend Zingping.
Come over to my house. We can play with my mom's new vacuum cleaner from our phones.
Jack said. It sounded like fun, but of course Mom knew what the boys were thinking. Don't download the app on your own phones, said Mom before she went to work. But of course they did. Lau Lau, Jack's grandmother, was sewing in the next room and did not know what the boys were doing. It wasn't long before they were twirling the machine around the living room. It was fun to see how the horse acted like a snake and sucked all the dust out of the corners.
I didn't think I'd ever enjoy cleaning the floors. Now let's see what this thing can suck up from inside Lolo's old family vase.
Jack said. The vase was Lau Lau's most treasured possession. Jack climbed onto the chair and took it down. He grabbed the vacuum's hose and pushed it onto the mouth of the vase. Zingping rubbed his fingers across the app. There was a whoosh, and the room changed completely. A wild twist of color and noise came zooming out of the mouth of the vase. Insects, fragments of songs, birds who shook the dust from their wings as they began to fly. Last came ghostly figures of people dressed in old-fashioned clothes. Jack got such a fright that he knocked the vase over. It fell on the floor and a piece of the lip of the vase cracked off and split into two. The magical things that had been sucked out of the vase began to panic.
Where are we going to live now? Don't worry. The app that brought you here will send you back to where you came from.
Zingping said. But when Zingping looked at his phone, the app had vanished from his screen. Jack looked at his phone screen. The app was still there, but no matter how hard they tried to open it, nothing happened.
What are you two doing?
Grandma Lau Lau said as she stood at the door of the living room. With all the creatures and songs flying around, she didn't need an answer.
How are we ever going to go home again?
One of the ghosts, a young man, cried. Lau Lau laughed when she saw the panic on Jack and Zing's faces.
The machine can't help you put everything back in the vase, but I can. Everything that was ever in that vase is something or someone I once knew.
Grandma Lau Lau knelt down on the floor and a long colorful insect with wings crawled onto her finger. Lau Lau carefully put all the things back into the vase. When the last song and creature was safely back in the vase, Jack and Zingping looked at Grandma Lau Lau.
How did you do it?
They asked at the same time. Grandma Lau Lau smiled.
The world is full of secret places. If you remember to treasure your memories and the people you shared them with, you will always find them again.
And what do we do with the broken bits?
Jack asked, holding the two pieces that had broken off the lip of the vase.
Each of you keep a piece of the vase to remind you to keep your ears and eyes wide open for things you love,
said Grandma Lau Lau.
Where did the app go?
Asked Zing, searching through his phone.
That you will have to find out all by yourself,
said Grandma Lau Lau as she stepped out of the room to finish her sewing. And so we come to the end of another Nali Bali story time. Today's story was called The Magic Vacuum, written by Hamilton Wende. Did you know that reading and telling stories to children at home can help them do better at school? If you want free stories to read to your children or for your children to enjoy on their own, visit Nali Bali website www.nalibali.org or Mobi site www.nalibali.mobi. You will find stories in 11 South African languages. as well as tips for reading and sharing stories with your children to grow their potential. Also look out for the bilingual Nali Bali Reading for Enjoyment supplements with great children's stories and activities available in newspapers. Nali Bali, it starts with a story.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
In our top stories, findings in Gauteng education probe on allegations of bullying released, and KZN municipality taking government and Transnet to court over rail infrastructure. Good afternoon. An investigative report that the Gauteng Education Department released reveals educators from the Ketlekile Primary School in Thokoza, east of Johannesburg, flouted protocol when dealing with an altercation between two learners. 12-year-old grade 6 learner Sibusiso Mbata committed suicide last month, a result of the incident. This after his teacher and the deputy principal allegedly bullied him for his sexual orientation. The Gauteng Education MEC Matome Chilwane released the report on the findings of an investigation into the death of the learner. Attorney Bayetseng Rangata led the investigation.
The allegations of emotional abuse and homophobic abuse against the learner by the deputy principal are substantiated by the evidence that is given to us through questioning and interviewing of all the witnesses. We also found that the deputy principal ill-treated, blasphemed and homophobically abused the deceased. It was also found that these utterances caused the deceased to commit the incident, which is suicide, and that the deceased was subjected to verbal and very public reprimand of his sexual choices and orientation.
Lobby group AfriForum says out of the samples tested from treatment works this year, only 19% met the minimum standards. It has just released its annual blue and green drop report. The findings mean that an alarming 81% of cases of the water that's dumped into rivers has not been adequately treated. The 2023 report contains the complete results of samples that AfriForum's network of 161 branches across the country took of municipal drinking water and the outflow of processed sewage water from local treatment works in August. The humanitarian group Gift of the Givers says the head of its office in Gaza has been killed in the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas. The founder, Imtiaz Suleiman, has confirmed the death. He says Ahmed Abbasi and his brother were killed when they returned from morning prayers earlier today. He has described Abbasi as a gentle and kind human being.
Ahmed Abbasi was our office head for 10 years, responsible for delivering aid to orphans, widows, the elderly, taking care of patients, providing water through our desalination plants, distributing food parcels, hot meals, and a range of other activities, helping patients in need and rebuilding homes of people destroyed. May the Almighty grant him a high status in the year after.
The Umhlatuze municipality on the KwaZulu-Natal North Coast is taking government and Transnet to court. It accuses them of failing to maintain rail infrastructure. The municipal mayor Xolani Ngwezi says they are taking the legal steps because of the impact of the congestion of trucks that are delivering cargo, especially coal, to the port. He says the problem has reached its crisis proportions.
But every role player in this economy here in the city must play his or her own role. We must play our role. Other departments must play their role. For that matter, we have got a tripartite alliance with the port, the ITZ, and the city. But this agreement, seems to be not working really because it is eating on our budget only. There is nothing. This problem here is almost at least two or 3 years old.
Further field, and finally, the former British Prime Minister David Cameron has held talks with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kyiv. Cameron says he wants Ukraine to be his first destination in his new role as Foreign Secretary. The BBC's James Waterhouse is in Kyiv.
I think what President Zelensky would have been listening out for was the word continuation, which he got. But continued support, as Lord Cameron put it, from the UK in terms of moral, economic, and above all, he said, military support, which he said the UK would continue to provide, which will be some crumbs of comfort, I think, to Ukraine amidst continuing political turmoil, shall we say, on the issue of continued support for Ukraine among some allies.
Recapping the top story, and investigative report that the Gauteng Education Department released reveals educators from the Ketlekile Primary School in Tokoza, east of Johannesburg, flouted protocol when dealing with an altercation between two learners. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. This is Aldrin Sampier on Beyond the Headline.
We are saying to JP Smith, you are not the law. You are simply an MMC. And if everybody in the Western Cape is afraid of you, we're not afraid of him. He's not a goddess of South Africa. He's not God. Everybody in the Western Cape, in the DA and so on, when he speaks, it's like it's God or Gabriel speaking. He's not Gabriel.
Gabrielle, you've gone too far. Gabrielle, you've gone too far, and you should hang your head in shame. For these wounds I cannot stay. You've gone too far. You broke my heart. You've gone too far.
This is Aldrin Sampier on Beyond the Headline. Top Sport with Michael Abramson.
Call on the line, Arthur from Pongola in KwaZulu-Natal. Arthur, you want to share some thoughts on Chiefs?
If we are serious about bringing Kaizer Chiefs back to winning the set, let us Kaizer Chiefs supporters force Kaizer Chiefs to sell Kaizer Chiefs so that we can have a run brand. Let us force Kaizer Chiefs to sell Kaizer Chiefs because I could see that the kids are failing to run Kaizer Chiefs. Now what Bob Ntang is saying is undermining the supporters.
Do you foresee that happening? Do you think that the powers that be would sell the club?
We have to see if we can do something. We have to boycott all the home ground Kaizer Chiefs games. If we boycott all the home games for Kaizer Chiefs, then Kaizer Chiefs and Kaizer Chiefs and his kids, they might see they need us.
Top Sport on SAFM. The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Bongo Mafina, I'm on Ponto and the one Jimmy Dozo. So salam, Queens of James. So salam, so salam, so salam, so salam, Queens of James. So salam.
In the morning time of this lifetime, I was checking out sunrise. Kile mutwa tlhaba khobe, situba ko se khole. Limpurwana matlamela babulai. But in the noon time of my life, kimo namanyane ke bo, maila go khotla. Tsimeka ya dithulano tsa botlhogo mo imele. Now you see how we do, come through with Jimmy Tutu. I know the evening's coming, but I'm not thinking about it. There's stuff about the camera tsa pula di bato nga go sa legale. And when we are no more, I get it, we'll be marching le bagale. Badimo ba le robaletse ditlhoko. Ba le robaletse ditlhoko.
the winds of change. Are the winds of change. Are the winds of change.
Setsuatsue sa phetogo. Oh, ma-Afrika re bolani fatlhego. La ramele o sa utlwi mo batsadi utlwa manong ka re a le ntlatsebe a le nthoiletsebe la utlwa sentle ke tla bua gape opela monna etso ke moribo morithitho mokaragano malasebilo go bua motsoga pele pela re nka be ke ngwana morago ra tla rane re ne sopo sengwe ka mollo di uphala tswina a dinonyane opela
His debut album was Echoes from the Past, which I think came out back in 1997. He's got quite a few SAMA awards under his belt, as well as Best Newcomer and Best Contemporary Jazz Album in 1998. And of course, that would have been for Echoes from the Past, probably his most seminal works to date. Here's the interesting thing about Jimmy Lulu is that if you go to his Wikipedia page, and you know, more often than not, we are not responsible for our own Wikipedia pages, right? If you go to his Wikipedia page, guess what language it's written in? Afrikaans. Hey, I would love to know, and I know there is a way of seeing. I think there is a way. I'm not too sure of seeing who was the first person who opened up, who initiated his Wikipedia page and started putting in the information. Or perhaps there isn't a way. I'm not too sure. But yes, his Wikipedia page is written in Afrikaans. Very interesting. So clearly, he either has, a huge following in the Afrikaans community, or somebody really just, really loves Jimmy Lulu and they happen to be Afrikaans and they wrote the Wikipedia page in Afrikaans. That was Jimmy Lulu featuring Bongo Muffin on this one with Winds of Change. That is how we enter into the second hour of the show. We are going to be catching up now with Lindsay Henson, who is the Executive Director of Lawyers Against Abuse. And they are collaborating with Miss Universe South Africa, Brioni, as they try and find really proactive solutions to support victims of GBV. And for many victims of violence, securing justice, of course, can be an overwhelming thing and sometimes an even impossible task. And I'm pretty sure the work that they do bridges that gap. Good afternoon to you, Lindsay. How are you doing?
Hi, good afternoon, Bridget. Thanks for having me.
It's only but a pleasure. Let's get an understanding of the work that Lawyers Against Abuse does.
Sure. So Lawyers Against Abuse is a South African nonprofit organization, and we focus on ensuring that victims of gender-based violence have meaningful access to justice. And so what we do is we provide services for victims and survivors of violence, including free legal services, so helping with protection orders, providing support in criminal cases, as well as then providing therapy and counseling support as well. And working with the state, like the justice system, state actors, to make sure that the law functions the way that it is meant to.
Mm-hmm. And this is important work, Lindsay, considering, the state of GBV in the country, the pandemic of it all, and of course, secondfold to that, what we often hear from victims who talk about the lack of support and the inability to access meaningful justice.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest challenges, is that if you look at like the legislation around gender-based violence and the resourcing, well, let's say the legislation around gender-based violence is actually quite extensive and comprehensive and very victim-centric. And I mean, even just last year, there were a number of amendments made to gender-based violence legislation that was intended to make it even more victim-centric, to address the vicarious trauma that women experience going through the system. And yet, at the same time, you continue to hear these stories of women who are just turned away from police stations, right? Where it actually comes down to the implementation of those laws by the individual state actors, whether those are the police officers or healthcare workers or court clerks or prosecutors. And it's really that gap between the way the law is written and the way that it's actually experienced by victims who are trying to pursue justice. And that's a lot of the work that we try and do at Lawyers Against Abuse.
Yeah. And oftentimes the sort of victims will also cite that there is nowhere for them to turn when the system fails them.
Exactly. And that's really one of the kind of reasons our organization was founded, because that's exactly right. You have the system that's set up, but then where do you turn when that system fails? And so that's some of the work that we do, is providing that direct support. So we accompany our clients all the way through the process. So, going with them to the police station when they make that initial report to make sure not only are they not turned away, but that they're treated with dignity and respect, and that their stories are believed and listened to. All the way through making sure that, perpetrators are arrested on a timely basis, all the way through to, the trial process and accompanying them to trial as well. And then in instances where the law doesn't work the way that it is meant to, then intervening to actually hold state actors accountable for what their obligations are under the law.
Absolutely. Let's take a quick break here. It's just gone 20 past 2 o'clock. On the Full Circle, we'll come back and continue our conversation with Lindsay Henson.
It's time for the most anticipated event of the year, the Crown Gospel Music Awards, 26 November at FNB Stadium in a breathtaking dome marquee. So, dress up and be prepared to walk the golden carpet. La Lela, levels, tickets are at Ticket Pro and Spa. Check voting details on Crown social media pages. Hashtag a new season.
This festive season, Dis-Chem's Pick and Mix is back with their 2+1 cheapest free. Look for the special sticker on irresistible fragrance gift sets, pampering bath sets, and delicious boxed chocolates, biscuits, sweets, and treats. Take 3, get the cheapest free. Dis-Chem's got the perfect gifts for the whole family this festive season. Shop online and in store. Wishing you joy, peace, love, and health. Dis-Chem Pharmacies. Better health starts here.
Dear Africa Chipembe,
Siyabonga.
Riyaleboga. Thank you for experiencing the Rugby World Cup France 2023 in your language of choice on SABC radio stations and SABC TV channels.
This journey is fulfilling and exhilarating when you are on board.
The front row belongs to Africa Tonga.
Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
We are in conversation with the representative of Lawyers Against Abuse, Lindsay Henson. She's the executive director. And they are an organization that intervenes in instances of GBV at various stages, giving much needed legal counsel as well as other supportive mechanisms, therapy, support, and really just holding their clients who are victims of GBV's hands along the path of trying to seek justice. And let's talk a little bit also, Lindsay, around the the financial commitments that come into play when victims are looking for assistance, whether from the system or from the legal fraternity. I can imagine that at first thought, that might be something that comes up for someone to say, for me to even access any kind of help, I need some kind of financial muscle, because at some point my matter might get to court and I might need to pay a lawyer and a lot of victims aren't in a good position financially.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point to clarify because so with a criminal case, then there should be no sort of financial costs involved. So, if your case does go to trial, then your side of the story, quote unquote, is then represented by a state prosecutor. So there isn't a need to then have private representation. And sometimes even our clients will get confused with that. I think it's a common misconception because the accused person could bring in a private defense attorney if they want to, that then is paid by them. And then, people will say, yeah, but he has a lawyer and I don't have a lawyer. But recognizing then that you as the complainant in the matter actually don't need private representation, that your side is then being represented by the state prosecutor free of charge. And then that would be different than for if you wanted to pursue a protection order, where that process is a civil process, and you can either choose to represent yourself, and the courts are actually designed to be they're intended to be very user-friendly, where neither side actually needs to be represented. It's quite informal, where you would just go and the magistrate would ask you questions and ask them the respondent questions. But again, you have an option there. If you want private representation, then you can. But again, those are it can be quite expensive.
Absolutely. Tell us a bit about the work that Lawyers Against Abuse, well, rather the areas and communities that Lawyers Against Abuse works in, because from what I understand right now, you're still in communities within the Gauteng region, yeah?
That's correct, yeah. So we run 3 centers, and they're all in Johannesburg, and those centers are based in Diepsloot and in Orange Farm and in Hillbrow, which then services the inner city. So if anyone is in those communities and would like our assistance, then you're welcome to go to our website at lva.org.za, and you can get all the information there, contact details about where our centers are located and how to get in touch with us for support.
Lovely stuff. And then let's get to Brioni, who we know right now is off probably in rehearsals for the live show that is coming up on Sunday. But Miss Universe South Africa, Brioni is your partner, collaborator, ambassador in some of the work that you do.
Yeah, so Brioni is a brand ambassador for the organization, and it was just a really nice alignment because Brioni herself, she's a lawyer, and her platform, her passion is around women empowerment, and particularly around the use of legal education to empower women, including victims of gender-based violence, but not necessarily limited to that. And so she has a campaign that's called Her Way Out, where it's just talking about, her belief that having that legal information, there an awareness of your legal rights is so critically important to just empower women across all spheres of life. So then there was just a nice alignment between her passion and what she wanted to achieve and some of the work that we do. And so just as a brand ambassador, then she will then help us in raising awareness about the work that we do, trying to raise some financial resources to support the work. And then she's also then partnering separately with Norton Rose Fulbright in order to actually go into communities herself and to try and provide some legal education and legal empowerment work.
And as you speak about Her Way Out, I'm just in my mind, as I'm going through a whole bunch of thoughts and envisioning or conversations I've overheard. When you speak to women, when you're in spaces with women and the issues around GBV come up, for instance, finding a way out always seems to be one of those hurdles that come out where people will, make statements like, I don't know how to leave. I feel stuck. I feel trapped. I don't know what my resources and options are. It's not as easy getting out as we often would like to make it seem when we go on social media and say, but why don't you just leave?
Yeah, you've hit it right on the head. It's often very much more complex than I think is presented, where there is this narrative of, almost a victim blaming narrative where, well, why did you stay? Why didn't you leave? When you look at just some of the contextual constraints that women are experiencing, a big one is just financial dependence on an abusive partner, where perhaps you don't work yourself, and you don't have necessarily any source of income generation, then can make it actually quite prohibitive to try and then set out on your own. And there are shelter resources available, but again, those are often quite limited and short-term in nature. And then other things that I think people don't necessarily take into consideration is just, especially when it's intimate partner violence, just how complex that relationship can be, where, there may still be genuine affection for this abusive partner. And often some of that is quite, it's all wrapped up in some like manipulative tendencies as well. But just genuinely wanting that person to change, and wanting them to return to the person that you fell in love with way back when. And so there is this willingness to forgive, and that's when we see the cycle of violence take place, where there's an incident, but then the person is apologetic and makes promises it won't happen again. They'll get help. They'll go to counseling. And so you so desperately want to believe that is true that you then forgive, and yet then we know that this kind of leads down this inevitable cycle. And so I think just that's a lot of the work that our social workers do with our clients as well, is just helping people kind of for themselves unpack and understand like what really is best for them in their kind of unique situations. And then, as you noted as well, but really thinking about what resources do I have available, if it's not necessarily being able to go straight from in an abusive household to being independent, but maybe it's, do I have family? Do I have friends? Like what social capital do I have that I can kind of lean on as I then transition towards independence?
And as we close it off, I know Deep Sloot, Orange Farm and Hillbrow, you've got centers there, and of course the lva.org.za is where people can go if they want to access more information. But are the centers free for free walk-in? I can just walk in at any time during the course of the day?
Yes, they are just their walk-in centers, so you don't necessarily need an appointment. Again, unfortunately, because of our own resource constraints, our full scope of services are limited to residents from those communities. But what we do offer for anyone who lives outside of those communities where we work, if they want to get in touch with us just to ask questions, we do offer free legal advice on the phone or via our social media pages, where we'll help kind of answer questions, advise in terms of what are available legal rights or remedies, as well as then help you know what steps you can take when the justice system is not, is failing you.
Yeah. Lindsay, we appreciate the time today. That was Lindsay Henson, Executive Director of Lawyers Against Abuse. 2:30, Anne is standing by.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Bridget. In the headlines, an investigative report into the death of a learner in Thokoza on Gauteng's East Rand has recommended the principal, deputy principal and educators be charged for the flawed manner in which they handled the matter. The report has found it contributed to a 12-year-old grade 6 learner, Sibusiso Mbata, taking his own life. Tensions at the Blyvoor gold mine are continuing as more than 800 workers have staged an underground sit-in at the mine since yesterday on the West Rand near Carltonville in Gauteng. And the United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres has urged all sides in the deepening conflict across large parts of Myanmar to allow aid deliveries. The fighting has forced 2 million people from their homes. I'll have details on these and other stories at 3.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
It is the full circle with myself, Bridget Masinga, this afternoon on SAFM, leading the conversation today. Hope that you are still having a good day. Listen, I'm looking at the weather. Geez, what a beautiful city Johannesburg is, right? It really is the greenest city, I think, in the country. I'm not going to say on the African continent because we haven't traversed every corner of the continent, but definitely the greenest city in the country. Just so beautiful. But it looks as though we're shaping up to have a bit of a summer storm a little bit later on from what I'm seeing. Those cumulonimbus clouds seem to be rolling in. The only bit of geography I still remember, but hopefully it won't be too bad at all. But just keep an eye on it in light of what we saw happening a couple of days ago. And if you got some things that you need to move indoors, be sure to move them indoors, or some things that you need to tie down and secure down, be sure to do that. We did have that conversation yesterday about just safeguarding some of your assets. Dr. Magazi is on the line. Bheki Magazi, medical head at Sanofi General Medicines, South Africa. According to the International Diabetes Federation 2021 statistics, South Africa has the second highest number of people living with diabetes in sub-Saharan Africa. More than 4.5 million people are affected. Second biggest killer as well, from what I understand. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Magazi. How are you doing?
Good afternoon, Richard, and good afternoon to your listeners. Yes.
Yeah.
Go on.
No, sorry, Doc. Go ahead.
Yes. I was saying, yes, you've got those frightening statistics in front of you. We've got about 4.5 million South Africans with living with diabetes in the country.
Shoo. And tell me this, what makes us, the second highest nation living with diabetes in sub-Saharan Africa? What are the factors that are influencing this?
I think one of the major drivers of that statistics is the rate of obesity in our society. We've got the highest rate of obesity in the world, particularly if you look at ourselves here. 68% women in South Africa are obese, and about 50% of the men are quite obese. And that link with obesity is quite important in diabetes. It drives the diabetes pandemic.
Dr. Magazi, can I just interject? We just don't have a clear line. We just want to switch lines with you momentarily, hopefully to get a clear line so that we don't lose any of the information that the good doctor is going to be sharing with us today. It was actually World Diabetes Day. When was it? I think, was it Monday? Was it Monday or Tuesday? It was World Diabetes Day, and there's been a call for, more sort of stringent legislation around the sugar taxes in South Africa. We know that sugar tax was introduced back in 2018, but a few are saying that it's not working. We got Dr. Magazi back on the line. Sorry about that, Doc, but important for us to have clear lines so we can hear you properly. Yes, you were saying that obesity, one of the big drivers in South Africa.
Yes, obesity is quite a big driver for the type 2. Remember, we've got about largely two types of diabetes, right? You've got type 1 diabetes, which is inherited. And in type 1 diabetes, it tends to affect younger people. And you watch it develop, they get wasted, loss of weight with loss of appetite, and drinking too much, drinking too much water. And that type 1 diabetes is hereditary, like I've said, and it's because your body starts fighting against its own insulin-producing cells. And these people present at a young age. The big problem that we have is with type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes tends to occur in older people, and it's directly related to weight and obesity. Right. The presentation is the same. They eat a lot and weight gain and urea and passing a lot of urine. Now, there is a problem with that kind of diabetes because it complicates over a long period of time, right? We end up seeing amputations in these people. They've got heart attacks, they've got strokes, they've got a myriad of problems associated with the disease. Now, what is the driver of type 2 diabetes in our society? It's really obesity. We've got very high rates of obesity in South Africa, and mainly driven by the diet and the high carbohydrate-based diet. And then also driven by the sedentary lifestyles that we lead. Exercise levels are actually quite low in the community. So with that lifestyle coupled with a high carbohydrate diet, amongst other factors, will drive the obesity epidemic. As a sideline, if you look at the size of the hamburger from McDonald's, for instance, and look at how big it was, say, 20 years ago, and how big it has become, that gives you a hint on how our dietary habits have changed, and really they haven't changed for the better.
Absolutely. In fact, Doc, as we were switching your lines, there's been a call for more stringent measures when it comes to the sugar taxes in South Africa. And the argument has been made that over 50 countries worldwide have implemented a sugar tax, and it has shown to work.
Yes, sugar tax has been shown to work. We've got it here in the country. Now, if I use statistics from the other countries and modeling data that has been done, if you look at a 5-year period and you increase the tax by 10%, and that will be the sugar, tax on sugar-based drinks, you actually reduce deaths from diabetes by about 8,000 over a 5-year period. And then you actually reduce new cases of type 2 diabetes by about 95,000 over a 20-year period. And then you reduce catastrophic expenditure, that is expenditure on dialysis for your kidneys, expenditure for amputations, and expenditure for treating blindness and cataracts, by about 12,000 rands per person over that prolonged period of time. So the sugar tax actually works. It's how we use it maybe that becomes quite debatable, depending on the societies. And in our society, I think there is a great deal of need for that tax to go into the fight against obesity, into education, right, and creating awareness in the society, the same way we did with HIV and TB, that we've got a pandemic that's related to diabetes. We did it with COVID, so we should be able to do that again. And then to actually empower and educate the people that already are living with diabetes so that they can better manage their disease. They should not be dying of the disease. It's a chronic, manageable disease that can be managed over a period of time.
And how are those attitudes, amongst those who are diagnosed and particularly living with type 2 diabetes? How are those attitudes towards management of the disease?
Yeah, that contributes to another challenge towards managing the disease. We call it inertia. It comes at two fronts. It's with the patients that live with the disease and the doctors that treat the disease. Over time, when you make a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, initially you want to manage it by adjusting the diet, adjusting exercise. And if that fails, you add oral drugs, right? But over time, as you lose the insulin-producing cells in your pancreas, you will end up needing insulin. So insulin is an injectable drug. And so there is a lot of fear and phobia around insulin. So there is a lot of diabetic patients don't get controlled easily, even if they need that insulin. And two, there is a challenge in them adjusting their lifestyles, because the cornerstone of management is adjusting that lifestyle. Put in more exercise, manage your diet, cut down on your carbs and on your sugar. And that becomes a challenge. And then when they finally need insulin, at times there is this, they regard themselves as failures, right? They give up on the management of their condition. And then that perpetuates the vicious cycle. On the side of the doctors, we have noticed that there is a lot of education that needs to happen amongst the doctors as far as the treatment of this condition is concerned. And two, There is a need to get over the reluctance of accelerating or intensifying the treatment when you get a diabetic patient. Intensification of treatment actually helps us prevent complications related to diabetes, like the amputations that I mentioned, kidney failure, your heart attacks, and your strokes, and loss of eyes, blindness, basically through the loss of your retina or cataracts developing.
Let's sort of, you said something just now about that there's some reluctance in as far as the treatment by doctors of diabetes. Where's the challenge there?
It's a lack of, I find it's a lack of confidence in, we don't have levels of adequate education or knowledge in the disease. So there is a lot of investment that we need to do in educating doctors about the disease and how to manage it in its various complicated forms. It's not a very straightforward disease to manage. It's got a lot of factors that influences its progression and its outcomes. So we need really to be teaching doctors to have high indices of suspicion when they are dealing with patients that could potentially be diabetic.
I see. Now, moving forward, how do we move forward? Because obviously these are alarming statistics and it has a rippling effect, right? Because if I'm diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, touch wood, as an adult, then that means it becomes genetically imprinted in me, and the probability of me then having a lineage that now is inheriting type 1 diabetes becomes higher. Am I correct?
Type 1, yes, it's inherited. Type 2, you've got a measure of control, right? You've got to manage your lifestyle. Exercise is usually a big part of it. And dietary management, it's easier said than done because of the society we live in. There are socioeconomic factors that predict our access to food and what kind of food sources that we have. But we need really to manage our intake of carbohydrate. Looking at policy level, I like what the government has done. They have set up a strategic framework to manage non-communicable diseases in the country, particularly looking at diabetes and hypertension. They've got the 90-60-50 framework that people have been talking about over the last few days. That 90% of the people that have diabetes should know about their condition, and 50% should be controlled, right? So that is very, very ambitious targets, considering that only 19% of our patients are controlled currently.
Yeah.
So we've got the right policy framework down for it. We now need to increase awareness of the disease. We need to increase access to screening for the disease, increase diagnostic facilities and access to diagnosis, and increase access to medication and treatment for the condition.
Yeah.
In the same way that we did for HIV and TB.
Yeah. Dr. Bheki Magazi, thank you so much for the time. The doc there is the medical head of Sanofi General Medicines South Africa. Let's take a quick pause here. Welcome in Aldrin St. Pierre to quickly tell us what's coming up on Beyond the Headline, and then we come back and we wrap it up.
Ford is turning 100, and there's never been a better time to buy a brand new Ford. We're giving away 100 vouchers worth an amazing 50,000 Rand each, and the sensational grand prize of us paying for one lucky winner's Ford. It's the celebration of the century. Visit a Ford dealer, buy a new Ford, and win. T&Cs apply.
It's about a little more than just an X on that ballot paper. It's about South-Gov knowing what I want, where I'm going, and who I want to take with on this journey. To me, it's not just a vote. It's my democracy. I own it. So show up and register for what you stand for. From Giyani to Umlazi, Pitori to Matatiel. Bring your green bar-coded ID, smart card or temporary ID certificate. Stations open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. 18 to 19 November 2023. Or register online by going to elections.org.za or call 0800 11 8000. It's your democracy. Own it. Brought to you by the IEC.
28 years ago, two great outfits of global rugby met in the Rugby World Cup final.
the Springboks and the All Blacks.
The Boks had a good day in the office in 1995 and lifted the Webb Ellis Cup on home soil. Amabokoboko have silenced the All Blacks once again.
At the Rugby World Cup Final France 2023 in search of their 4th title. La la, Zanzi Afrika.
Back-to-back victors and 4-time champions of the Rugby World Cup.
An extra seat has been booked for a flight back to Africa Tonga for the Webb Ellis Cup to travel with the world's best rugby national team. Amabokoboko. Congratulations to the Springboks.
Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga. Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Akagezi namhlanje akagezi. How are you doing?
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm good. Are you cold?
I am actually.
It's a bit
chilly in
here.
here, actually. Yeah, so coming up on the show this afternoon, we're monitoring what's happening in Parliament right now with the debate on the Israel-Hamas war, a motion that has been proposed by the EFF that the Israeli embassy in South Africa be closed down, and also that South Africa cut or suspend diplomatic ties with Israel temporarily while we have this war going on. The ANC has come out in support of it, actually. So, which means that if all ANC MPs are in Parliament or connecting virtually, it might actually pass, and then the Israeli embassy could be shut down. It would be very, very significant move.
Well, I'm not surprised considering the president's, rather, why am I surprised?
Yes.
Considering his statement that he made
Exactly.
yesterday.
When the president said it's a genocide, when the president said Gaza has been turned into a concentration camp, I knew that this is possibly coming. So here it is. And today you have that debate taking place. And then also on the show this afternoon, we will actually be speaking to Mads Gilbert, Norwegian physician, who has actually worked at the Al-Shifa hospital, which has now also faced an incursion by the IDF. This is the Israeli Defense Force, which, of course, the international community has condemned. And then at 5 o'clock, the interview, we're going to be in conversation with Fetizani Pandelani, who is the Solicitor General, as we look at the state of the state attorney, because remember that the Chief Justice has also complained that the state attorney's office said that they don't have money to give him so that he can defend his State Capture Commission of Inquiry report.
Yeah. Lots coming up today, and I'll be keenly listening to the part where the DA comes in at the debate.
Interestingly, though, so you've heard now in the news about the Gift of the Givers volunteer who died in there's one volunteer, Gift of the Givers, who died in Gaza after coming from prayer. And I saw a tweet from John Steenhuisen, the leader of the DA, saying that we condemn what has happened and we demand an immediate investigation.
Interesting turn of events. That's coming up on Beyond the Headline this afternoon, 3 until 6. Quick one, and then we come back and wrap up the show.
Rand Water is concerned about the significant increase of water consumption in its areas of supply. The increase in water consumption is putting severe strain on Rand Water's distribution network. To save water, please do not wash your cars with hose pipes. Use buckets. Water your garden with sprinklers between sunset and sunrise. Do not wash your pavements with hose pipes. Use brooms. Repair your leaking taps. Cover your swimming pools to avoid quick evaporation. Shower instead of bathing in a tub.
This message is sponsored by Rand Water in partnership with City of Joburg, City of Ekurhuleni, and City of Tshwane.
Eswatini will tackle Libya in a crucial FIFA World Cup 2026 qualifier in Group D. Southern Africa battles it out with North Africa. Who will celebrate the final whistle? Sihlangu Negati or the Mediterranean Knights? Catch the FIFA World Cup qualifier between Eswatini and Libya on Friday 17 November at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport DTT Channel 4, SABC 1, also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
In less than 10 minutes, let's wrap up our last conversation with Lizo Nguni, who's the spokesperson at Old Mutual Insure. And this week, the world observes the International Fraud Awareness Week. That's taking place until the 18th of November. And of course, we thought it would be prudent of us to catch up with Lizo and talk about the rising trend, of insurance fraud. And Lizo, this has become it poses a significant risk in the non-life insurance industry.
Afternoon, Bridget, and afternoon to your listeners. Yeah, definitely. I think insurance fraud, we have seen it go through cycles in time or in step with economic cycles. So as the economy does well, we see less of it. So then as the economy does worse, we do see an increase in fraud and just general criminality as well.
Is South Africa more adverse to these kind of elements? I feel as if I've been seeing more and more people coming out from the financial sectors talking around this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think South Africa is not immune to insurance fraud at all. It does get tempting if you are going through hard times and you do have insurance and you'd like to try make a quick buck somehow by submitting a false claim or submitting for damage that wasn't insurance related. And we have seen instances where that happens, and in very extreme cases, it doesn't end up well for the person who decides to do it, because it can lead to a criminal record in extreme cases.
And talk us through perhaps some of the risk, the risk that would affect the insurance industry, or that's posed to the insurance industry if we see, more and more cases rising.
Yeah, I think the biggest risk for the insurance industry is if it's not detected, it can result in higher premiums for honest policyholders. So generally what insurance fraud does is it increases the cost of claims, and insurers use information like the cost of claims, the historical cost of claims over the last couple of years to price their contracts. So if that cost of claims is higher, then that might result in higher future premiums that honest policyholders have to pay. But luckily, there are quite a few measures and systems that insurers have put in place to ensure that they do pick up on insurance fraud. There's certain mathematical and statistical models that they apply to pick out where the likelihood of the claim being fraudulent, as well as policy terms and conditions that they add on to their policy to ensure that it is kept to a minimum if it does slip through.
I think you got my, my brows frowning when you make the suggestion that ultimately the burden of picking up this cost would fall on innocent customers like those of us listening here today. So, it seems like our hands are tied, though, as if there's nothing that we can do, to prevent fraudulent activities. So why are we being penalized?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult if there's a really sophisticated fraudulent claim submitted, and that goes through all of those fail-safes that insurers have set up. It's really difficult to know whether the claim was fraudulent or genuine. And in that case, an insurer might not even realize that they've paid out a fraudulent claim if it's bypassed all of their systems and safeguards. So when they use historical claims information to price future insurance premiums, they might have those fraudulent claims in their data. So it's unfortunate, but I suppose it's general cost of society, or cost that we have to pay for this life society that we live in, unfortunately.
Yeah, it doesn't make it any easier for us to swallow. That's for sure, Lizzo. Let's talk about perhaps, the red flags that one should be vigilant of in assessing whether or not a claim could potentially be a fraudulent claim or not, or some of the things that even we should be on the lookout for, because I feel like we're falling for the scams and everything else as well, thinking that I'm talking to Old Mutual. Meanwhile, jiggy, not so much.
Yeah, absolutely. We have seen quite a lot of that as well, where people pose as insurance companies and say that your insurance premium hasn't been paid, please pay it into this account, and meanwhile it's not even the insurance company's account that money's being paid into. What we do advise customers is that your insurer will never contact you to make sort of those arrangements, especially if it's like on a WhatsApp or things that seem very informal. We won't engage our customers in that way. Just be very vigilant in terms of that. But in terms of the red flags that we have to flag insurance claims, most insurers will have a pool of data of certain red flags that they know of when a claim is submitted. So, for example, if a claim is submitted for more than the value of the item that was insured, and various other circumstances in which red flags can be raised. But insurers will keep a database of those red flags, and they won't investigate every single claim submitted, but they will flag certain claims that do raise enough of those red flags. So there are processes that are in place at most insurers to pick up on these claims. So you as a policyholder, if you are a genuine policyholder, you have submitted a genuine claim, you have absolutely nothing to worry about regarding fraudulent claims that might be submitted.
I think probably my parting shot would be, what happens? What are the consequences when you are found to be making a fraudulent claim?
Well, most claims will be investigated if they are flagged by a series of red flags that the insurers keep. And upon investigation, it can be found that either the claim is fraudulent or not. If it is found to be fraudulent, then the claim will most likely be rejected. If the policyholder feels that is unfair for whatever reason, then there is the short-term insurance ombud that the claim can be taken to. And then the ombud will review that claim on all of its merits and all of the evidence that the insurer has, and deem that claim either to be fraudulent or genuine. And if the insurer then has an issue with that verdict from the ombud, then it can go to court to be almost the ultimate say on whether the claim is valid or fraudulent.
Yeah. Lizzo, we have to leave it there this afternoon. That was Lizzo Nguni, a spokesperson at Old Mutual Insure. And that is how we wrap up the show from our end today. We thank you so much for choosing to be in conversation with us. You could have been anywhere and you chose to be here. We certainly don't take it lightly. I got a WhatsApp earlier on that said, Sis Bridget, the greenest city, I think, is Nelspruit, not Johannesburg. Listen, Nelspruit, my family comes from Nelspruit. Definitely one of the best scenic drives, those mountains, those valleys, the lakes, everything is beautiful. The greenery, everything is divine. Nelspruit is just a wonderful, Mpumalanga is a beautiful province. But Nelspruit City is the greenest city? Sure. On that note, Aldrin St. Pierre is standing by. Inshallah, we get to do it again tomorrow.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 104.3 FM in Rustenburg. SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 38462. Now that's good news.
independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
In our top stories, recommendations following probe into death of a grade 6 pupil and tensions at the Blyvoor gold mine on the West Rand. Good afternoon. An investigative report into the death of a learner in Thokoza on Gauteng's East Rand has recommended the principal, deputy principal and educators